Today we could celebrate the feast day of two great churches, St. Peter Basilica in Rome and St. Paul outside the walls in Rome as well. And what's significant, at least for me, if you've never been to Rome, are these incredible edifices built on the foundation of the place, basically, where these two great apostles were martyred. And so it starts this kind of link chain connection that God, when he started to recognize, when he revealed his plan, he wanted to do it through Christ by creating this kind of chain link between the 12 apostles that would then go around the whole entire world for all times to be able to bring all of us to salvation. But note, the first link of the chain is something that is obvious. Peter would die upside down, crucified, and then get his feet chopped off, just in case he was going to walk around after he died. They didn't want him doing that. And then Paul would get his head lumped off, and it would bounce 3 times like a basketball before it got shot into the actual tomb that he would be buried in. So these are the two buildings that are built upon these apostles. And it's a perfect image for like us, because our deep connection with the apostles always comes through Jesus Christ giving his life for us, and we get to plug into it, most importantly, here in the Eucharist. And just as you go into any house where you can plug into that electricity, so does the Eucharist give us that same gift, that same freshness, that same zeal, the same love, the same desire that Jesus Christ showed on Calvary, and we just get to plug back into it, because Jesus Christ, what he gave to those apostles, doesn't just end because the apostles died, but actually lives on through the hearts of all of us who want to let Jesus Christ do in us what he did with them. And it gets all prefigured by this guy Matthias, who's kind of like Mel Gibson in the Braveheart movie. He's like, I am fed up with trying to get my piece of the pie so that the corruption can continue, but at least I've created a little space for myself. And he's like, enough is enough. I don't think he wore a kilt, but I know that Matthias was like, that's enough baloney, pun intended, for me to put up with. And he even recognized that the smallest details are worth fighting for. That the smallest letter of the law is worth being faithful to. Not because we want to be scrupulous, but because when you love someone, details matter. Even like, I remember when I was in seminary, I used to get corrected. You would come into the chapel, the Blessed Sacrament there, and you do your mandatory like genuflection. And we would have this kind of group therapy, so to speak, where you'd sit around and say, hey, you ate with your mouth open and this and that in seminary. Try to form ourselves. It really didn't help me too much. But I always remember somebody saying, I wonder if when you genuflect, you really are genuflecting to the King of Kings. Details matter. And where our hearts are genuflecting, that's what we're going to be following. And what Peter and Paul, Matthias, and all the followers of God say, that no detail is too small. No little act of love to God is unnoticed. And it's in those details. I don't know the whole life of Matthias, but the very book of Maccabees was named after him. And you can see in there the great courage of that woman that we contemplated the other day in Scripture with her 7 sons. But all these great manifestations happen, like the death of Peter, the death of Paul, and the following of Jesus, only when the little details of our life are seen as acts of love rather than, oh, this is a pain in the neck. And, that was the little detail that Matthias said. I'm not going to eat bologna. I'm not going to eat bacon because it violates the sacred law of the Jewish tradition. Even the smallest things can be great acts of love. And we used to do that in our church, especially on Fridays and especially through fasting. And so it's good for us to maybe in our own minds to truly dedicate ourselves over these next few weeks to things that can help us to fast so that details in God's love for us can be at the utmost. I'm not saying not to eat turkey on Thanksgiving, But maybe instead of 15 slices of turkey and 20 pounds of stuffing, maybe just half of that would be good. Or maybe instead of 15 cups of wine, maybe just cutting back to 11 would be good. Or maybe instead of criticizing everybody in my family, I only criticize 5 people in my family. You see, all these little details can really come down to the fact that I do it out of love for God. And when we do that, we start building on that foundation, that chain link that goes around the world that we can plug into as well.